Thanks everyone for joining. My name is Danielle Robinson. I am the creator of Kyora IQ, and tonight we are hosting IGNIGHT Kyora IQ. It's our first night session where we will have various cybersecurity professionals that will be coming on and speaking with us. And today we have Sean Mitchell, Associate Director, Security Operations Center out of the United Kingdom. And I'm so happy that you are here, Sean. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
No problem. So I want to get right into it. I want to be respectful of everyone's time since we only have an hour. If you could just introduce yourself, tell us about your journey, how you got started into cybersecurity. We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you. Married for 20 years in January. I've got 2 kids. Grew up in South Africa. I actually started a computer science degree at the University of Cape Town. I only did my first year. So I was always interested in IT from a young age, but didn't actually wanted to be a pilot. So I came to the UK at the age of 18 to pursue an aviation career. A lot harder than you might think it is unless you got a lot of money. So I actually ended up working in a lot of different industries, so catering, sales, logistics, but I ended up in air traffic control and did that for about 5 years. But I just couldn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. So fortunately, the pattern when you're doing air traffic control is quite nice. You got 6 on, 4 off. So my days off, I was teaching myself how to code. I was learning bits and pieces around ethical hacking, watching lots of YouTube videos about that sort of stuff. So that kind of piqued my interest in cybersecurity. When I stopped doing air traffic control, I ended up moving into software testing. So I was testing the back end of the air traffic control system. So they took me on because I had some good, expert knowledge in air traffic control and the systems that they were testing. So I was quite lucky there, but spent 2 years doing that. And I was very lucky to get exposure to Unix and Linux and code, more coding experience and scripting, bash scripting, things like that. So, and while I was doing that, I was working with a colleague who was a pen tester, and I was just intrigued. Obviously, I'd learned a little bit about it on YouTube, but I asked him if he would mentor me because that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up being mentored by him, and I got another two mentors. So I was being mentored in ethical hacking, malware analysis, risk management, things like that. So that was about 18 months of being mentored and just continuing to develop my skills, doing home labs, stuff like that. And eventually lucky enough to have my first opportunity. So my mentor happened to be my network as well, and a job came available through my mentor. I actually didn't get the first job that came up, but I got the second one. So obviously learned the lessons from the interview and got into the industry. That was about 10 years ago. So I was lucky enough when I entered the industry to be trained by some of the best. So it was Lockheed Martin, ex-Lockheed Martin Security Operations Center. Obviously they're famous for doing cyber kill chain, creating that methodology. But so they trained me up. That's where I got my grounding. So I worked in defense, critical national infrastructure, banking, health, finance, logistics, retail. I've worked internal SOCs. I've worked for managed services like I'm doing at the minute. I've done consultancy. At the minute, I'm running an operation for one of the largest social media companies. So we're currently looking after security operations, threat hunting, detection engineering, automation, service delivery, change management. So I've got about 40 people under me at the minute. That's it in a very big nutshell.
That's amazing. It's funny you touched on a topic about you wanting to be a pilot, and it costs a lot of money. And it's so funny because my son is actually a pilot. He's got his private pilot. He's in the process of getting his instrument rating. He'll have that within the next month or so. So I totally get it. That is why I have been working my tail off. So I completely get what you mean. So amazing journey. And that leads me into another topic of discussion about why you believe folks with no work experience deserve a chance at being hired, right? For the audience's awareness, I saw Sean Mitchell on LinkedIn. He's a big proponent of hiring candidates who have lab experience. So I do want to hear your thoughts about that. What do you look for on the resume? What does that training look like once you bring them on board and things like that?
Well, I've not seen a very good correlation of people who have formal education or even necessarily transferable skills from other areas who end up being really good SOC analysts. So somebody who doesn't necessarily have formal work experience but does have home lab or hands-on training. I always look for people who have the right attitude and aptitude. So the most important for me is, one of the foundations is having passion and motivation for the industry. I think a mistake a lot of people make is they chase the money. They come in and they get disillusioned very, very quickly because it's not what they expect. It's a lot harder than they thought. And if you don't have the passion and the motivation, then it's really hard to push through some of the hard times. So always test passion and motivation. Check to see how they immerse themselves in the industry. So, what blogs are they looking at? Are they looking at blogs? Where do they get their cybersecurity news? Are they reading white papers? What podcasts are they listening to? What are their favorite YouTubers? Are they following any social media personalities that really give good advice? So I first test that. And then knowledge. So do they have a thirst for knowledge? You don't have to know everything, but as long as you're hungry and you're able and willing to learn, that's a huge thing. And also check to see if they have the fundamentals. I don't care if you have certs or not. If you can explain networking, operating systems, and the security basics, understand attacker techniques, you know the different types of malware, you just know all the basics that you need to be a SOC analyst, and very well, then yeah, that's always something that will stand you in good stead. And then obviously aptitude as well. So, do you have the ability to learn? Can you demonstrate that you've learned from mistakes in the past? Do you have critical thinking skills? Are you able to adapt? How are you able to handle stress? Are you resourceful? Again, you can't know everything, so you have to be able to find answers to things quickly. And then, other things like soft skills, humility. Humility is massive. If you think you know everything, then you're gonna find yourself in trouble very quickly. You have to be curious, and you have to have grit as well. So times will be hard. You have to be able to push through it. So all those sort of things, I take it. It sounds like a lot, but it's all workable on. So if somebody comes and they don't have degrees or anything like that, but they've got good home labs and hands-on training, practical experience, and all of that, then you won't have a problem getting into the industry.
Great. Sounds great. And when you say home labs, especially for being a SOC analyst, what home labs specifically stand out for you? Is it more so like standing up an instance of Splunk or a whole cybersecurity lab, or how detailed are you looking for those home labs to be on the resume?
For me, it's I think it's great if somebody can say that they've built their own SOC. Obviously it doesn't have to be fully functioning, but if they've installed SIM, they've got a bunch of machines sending logs into the SIM, they've got EDR installed. Now you can get those open source versions of these out there. You've got NDR like Bro and Zeek you can install and configure and take your own packet captures. You've got yourself like a sandbox to look at malware. You've got Kali Linux box, and you've done some testing on vulnerable operating systems, things like that. So if you can any home lab that demonstrates the skills that you need to be a good SOC analyst. So if you can set up two VMs and get them to talk to each other, you're demonstrating knowledge of networking. And installing tools on Linux like SIM or EDR or anything like that will demonstrate that you have operating system knowledge. So anything that can test the skills that are going to be really, really useful as a SOC analyst. And what I really like about your homegrown home labs is the fact that it's not straightforward to set them up and install them. You will run into problems. It might be an old walkthrough that you're using with a different operating system. So the guide doesn't really work. So you have to kind of tweak it a little bit to work for yourself. So anything that gets you to troubleshoot problems and solve them and get things up and running, I think is really, really valuable.
Thank you so much for that. I think that experience, like you said, with the home labs is very, very important. I did have a question about the job market in the United Kingdom. So when you are receiving applications, is it like here in the United States, within four days, you're getting 1,000 applications, or what does that look like in your arena?
Yeah, for entry level, tier 1, L1 SOC analyst roles, yeah, definitely. You're going to have the high hundreds, if not thousands of applications for sure. But what I always say to people is don't be deterred by that, because it's so easy on LinkedIn these days to just click easy apply. The number of people, CVs I've looked at that are coming through where they have zero background in IT or anything. They may be working as a plumber currently, but they haven't demonstrated any value, any knowledge or any certifications or any hands-on. So you have a lot of people who are applying for these roles who aren't qualified, right? So it's very easy these days to apply. And even the ones who might have some experience probably aren't qualified for the role. So I'd say a good 70-80% of the people who are applying for these roles aren't really candidates. qualified candidates for the role anyway. So that shrinks down the number of candidates. So it's not as hard as people might think to stand out, but people still tend to blend in because these just look the same.
Right.
So.
Right. And then on the resume itself, are you like when you're going through, right? Typically, we're only looking at resumes for probably 30, 60 seconds to see if they're a good fit or not. Does anything stand out to you like home lab XYZ? Is it something that really captures your attention when you're looking at them?
Yeah. So when people can demonstrate knowledge and passion and the fact that they've immersed themselves in the industry. So some of the stuff I mentioned already, like if they can demonstrate attitude, aptitude, they mentioned things like podcasts and home labs, and they've got a little section in their so I say CV resume. They've got a section that explains the home labs that they've done, not just what they've done, but what they did, what they learned from the home lab, and how that relates to the job that they're applying for. That can be really, really good. Some of the things that, don't look very good on a CV is when people just put like dumps of tools. I see this it's a very common thing. They'll put a section of tools and they'll list 30, 40 tools that they may only have ever used once in their life. And they will get asked, not by everyone necessarily, but they'll certainly get asked by me. I'll pick a random selection of 2 or 3 of them and ask them to tell me, what experience do you have with that? And a lot of the time, I'd say if not most of the time, they aren't able to really explain it. So
Yeah, that makes sense because it's best. And we always preach, don't just put, that you've used CrowdStrike, put how you used it. What did you detect? Some of your experiences with the tool. And that's definitely how you stand out. So I completely agree. I did want to take a break so that some other folks can get some questions in here. If anyone on the call has any questions for Sean, I'll take a break from my questioning because I'm sure it's feeling like an interrogation right now.
it's all good.
Yes, I have a question. Hey, Sean. Hi, nice
Hey,
to
Jessica.
meet you.
You too.
As far as the ATS system, do you guys also use it to filter applications as well?
I don't have a lot of experience with ATS. I tend to be on the back end of receiving. In other words, I don't actually look at all the 1,000, 2,000 CVs that come through. That's our talent acquisition team. So we don't use ATS in my company, but I know a lot of companies do use it. So yeah, my experience with it is it's hit or miss. If it's configured well, it can do a good job, but I don't think ATS is necessarily the problem. I think it's usually the configuration of it. Hopefully that answers your question. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people tend to put keywords on their CV because they want to get through the ATS filters, but then it hurts them on the back end because they're not able to actually explain. So they might say, oh yeah, Kali, because they think the role requires knowledge of Kali Linux. But then when they get asked a question about Kali Linux, they can't answer it. So it's a difficult balance, I think, sometimes.
Okay. Thank you for answering that question.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyone else have a question? Okay. All right. If no further questions, I did want to go back to, you mentioned if they watch podcasts and they follow folks on social media. Are you suggesting that they actually put that on their resume or that they just demonstrate that during the interview? You would. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'd have a section in there because it demonstrates your passion, motivation. I think one of the biggest shortcomings, I think, of people breaking into the industry now is they're coming into it for the wrong reason, and usually for the money. And if you can't demonstrate a passion, a lot of hiring managers are looking for that passion, right? Because they know that the passion, a lot of things flow from that, motivation, drive, curiosity, hunger for knowledge, thirst for knowledge, things like that. So if you can demonstrate that passion, then you're far more likely to stick it out.
I totally agree with that. I was telling my learners just the other day that I had 6 months, 9 months actually, of security experience when I went to backfill behind a director, and the client ended up saying, we want to keep her as a security manager. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have 9 months, but they said you did such a great job while you were here with us for the week. And you demonstrated, a hunger to learn, a hunger to be, very supportive for our team, and just an overall great personality that meshes well with our team. They said, we can teach you whatever you need to know, but you have the aptitude to learn,
Yeah.
whatever we have going on here. So I totally agree with that. That's great advice. And we will definitely move forward with ensuring that people are also putting their social media posts on their resumes as well. That's a good point. So I did have a question with AI right now. Are you seeing, like many other recruiters are seeing, where folks are using AI on their resume and you're getting the same consistent information across the board?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not necessarily consistent information, but just our intuitions now with Gen AI are pretty good. You see it in LinkedIn posts, it's resumes, anything, blog posts. You can see usually when it's been written by AI. And when it has been written by AI, or even if you have a sense that it's been written by AI, it's immediately brings a question about the integrity of the CV. And now all the information on there could be completely accurate, but I think CVs should really demonstrate your personality, and I think all AIs tend to have the same personality, which is not very doesn't stand out very well.
Understood. Makes sense. And then, what about the hiring in the UK, right? Because I feel like we have a shortage of skills, right? I don't feel like we necessarily have a shortage of jobs here in the US. We have a shortage of skill set that to be able to fill those jobs. So in the UK, for the global organizations, are they hiring US employees to work remote and be employed in the UK, or are there like legal boundaries with that?
I'm sure some of them are. I've not done it myself. I've not heard many companies or any that I can give an example of that are doing that, but I'm sure there are some. I mean, I did it the other way around. In fact, some of my old colleagues as well from previous companies are doing it the other way around, where they're actually doing work for US based companies. So I'm sure it happens the other way around as well. I agree. I don't think there's a shortage of jobs. There's just a shortage of skills, and there's not a shortage of people. There's plenty of people applying for these jobs. There's just not a lot of skilled people applying for the jobs. So,
Right. Agreed. All right. So what advice, let's just say, if you could tell the next learner, someone who's like, well, I have no experience, I don't know what to do. I know we touched on a lot of it, but what advice would you tell them if I'm coming to you right now just saying I'm worried about this?
about the skill shortage,
This
you mean, or
transition, just the transitioning, with me not having any experience, because that's what we get a lot, right? So I just want
yeah.
them to hear it from someone else.
Yeah, there's a lot I could say. Know what you want first and foremost. Know what job you want. I think there's a lot of people who, or at least pick one. You may not. You can change your mind. You can change your mind after a year or two and transition, move sideways into something else. And a lot of people do. I did. But pick one and focus on it, and then work towards that particular job. I think what a lot of people do is they make the mistake of, I just want to get my foot in the door, so let me try everything. So I'll learn that and that and that and that and that and that. And but before they know it, it's overwhelming. Their CVs are very generic, and then when they get put in front of somebody for an interview, that one day they're interviewing for vulnerability management, the next it's for SOC, the next it's for GRC, and then it's obvious to the hiring manager that that's what they're doing. They're throwing as much mud at the wall and seeing what sticks, and it's not a good approach. So definitely know what job you're going for, reverse engineer it, so you know exactly what it is to actually, what you need to do to be able to, what skills you need to have, what things you need to learn. Getting a mentor is huge. So making sure you have a mentor. Make sure that mentor is either hiring for the job that you want, or currently works in the job, or used to work in the job that you want. So they're actually going to be able to give you good advice about what you need to be able to get into that role. And they can shorten the amount of time it takes to get into that role by months, if not years, because it's very easy to go down rabbit holes. It's good to go down rabbit holes sometimes because it helps with depth, but sometimes it's really hard to understand. You can go 6 layers deep in the warren, and then forget where you actually went in and why and where you were on the pathway. So make sure that you have a mentor that can help you keep on track. Make sure you have a really good roadmap to get where you want to get to. Make sure you don't stray too far from that roadmap as well. But certainly learn the fundamentals. You must learn the fundamentals. I'm talking specifically for SOC analyst roles, but I'm sure it's the same for other ones as well. know your fundamentals very well. Don't skip them. I see that time and time again. People, even analysts who've been in the industry for 2-3 years, who don't know some of the basics, like what is a loopback address, or what is 0.0.0.0. It's just basic network information, but they don't know what it is. So have patience, because it will take time. You're not going to be ready in 2 or 3 months. Maybe, I don't know. It depends on your background. Depends how quickly you learn, but highly unlikely that you're gonna be ready in 2 or 3 months of doing a few CompTIA certifications and a couple of try hack me or hack the box labs. It's just not realistic. You might have somebody will take you on like that, but might work out if you're lucky, but most of the time it doesn't. So and yeah, just be ready to put in the hard yards. It'll be worth it in the end. You're going to have to make some sacrifices. You will. I'm married, but obviously my 2 kids, when I started trying to get into into cybersecurity, I was doing a correspondence university degree at the time as well, and I was doing my OSCP. I was probably doing 2 or 3 hours a night, so I wasn't spending the time with my family, friends, hobbies and things like that I was into for a good couple of years, because I was trying to break into the cybersecurity, and it's paid off. I think not everyone, a lot of people are in a rush at the minute. They're sold on this idea of breaking in quickly and making a lot of money quickly, and it's diluted the pool, should we say. And last thing I'll say, network a lot with people. Build your network of people. It's key. When you're looking at these jobs and there's thousands of people applying for it, it's really demotivating. But if you network the right people, you can find out about these jobs before they even get put out there on LinkedIn. So and you can be your name can be there on top of the CV pile before. So yeah, networking is key.
Totally agree with everything that you said. Everything. And that's why I just love when I see your comments on LinkedIn, because I'm like, yes. Especially the part where you talked about finding your niche, right? I tell my students that all the time, the importance, and this is, not just for SOC, but for any position. I always recommend starting with Security Plus. Security Plus is your foundation. It's the basics, right? It covers a little bit of every domain, so that you can kind of get in there and figure out, what you like, kind of like what your mind, gravitates to. And then, like you said, start going down a rabbit hole in one area. That way you can reverse engineer it and then be great at it. So when you go into the interviews, you know what you're talking about, because you have done the research backwards and forwards to figure out what it takes to be successful in that position. So I'm a big proponent of that, although I know even some of my consultants and instructors are like, no, do everything. I'm like, listen, I have ADHD. I can't do everything. I've got to focus. And there's a lot of people like me that have to focus on one thing, be great at it, and then I'm not saying do not expand, right? Because you do want to be a well-rounded cybersecurity professional. But if you focus, pick a struggle, as I like to say, if you focus in one area, then you can be the best at that position. So highly recommended as well.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you've got time to touch on all that other stuff as well. Have a working knowledge of it. When you want to become a SOC analyst, you need to know a little bit about risk, but you don't have to dive really deep about risk. Understand what risk is, why it's important to a business, how it relates to your role. Know the difference between a risk, a vulnerability, and a threat, but it doesn't mean you have to go and learn everything about GRC. Just understand how it relates to the role that you're going for, basically.
Yep, totally agree. As a matter of fact, we just had Greg's class yesterday, the GRC course, and that came up even for pen testing. Go ahead, Mr. Melville.
No, I just raised my hand, as in yay. I don't know where my thumbs up button is. We use Google Meets more. I don't know where my thumbs up button is, but yeah, totally agree.
Under the React one, I think, with a smiley face.
Oh, there it is. Oh.
Yeah. So I was saying that we just had Greg's class yesterday, and the same topic came up with penetration testing. You don't have to know everything about GRC, but again, you do have to understand the risk, especially when, you have to now explain that penetration test report to the end user. You know what I'm saying? So yes, totally agree with you there. GRC, at least a GRC course, you're not necessarily getting in depth with it, but attending the class just so that you have a foundational understanding is also highly recommended for us as well.
Everything's risk-based, right? That's we can't. Sorry, Greg.
Go ahead. I'll say it later.
Yeah, I was just going to say everything is based on risk, because you can't You can't stop everything. You can't detect everything. You have to have a risk-based approach. So when you do your threat modeling and figuring out what threat actors care about the industry that you and the company that you're working for, you got to prioritize. And that's a risk. You have to understand how risk ties in. It all starts with risk.
Agreed.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, because as you were talking, I was updating my slides and fine-tuning my slides for next week, where I'm going to go deeper dive into the risk. And one of the things I'm exactly the thing I was typing right now was the difference between a risk, a threat, and a vulnerability. So glad you brought that up. So cool.
Yep. Anyone have any other questions for Sean? If not, I'm just going to open it up to discussion and stop the recording. I got the bulk of what we needed.
Hey, Daniela. Yeah, I have a question for Sean.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Victor Fernandez. I'm also instructor here at Kyora IQ.
Hey,
And I would like to know your thoughts about, I'm a dad too. I have 3 kids. And I'm always like trying to deal with like time management. How you do, because I heard that you have 2 kids, right? So it's like, how do you do to like continue like advancing your career with 3 kids, a wife, like hobbies and all that stuff?
Yeah. So
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
That's one of the things, if you'll see my LinkedIn profile, you see one of the last things I have in my little bio is productivity node. And I had to learn how to be productive, because when I started doing just before I got into cyber, about a year before I got into cybersecurity, I started my correspondence degree with the Open University in the UK here, which is a 7-year degree, part-time, but yeah, it took 7 years. So I was married, kids, doing degree, trying to get certifications for getting into cyber and a few other bits and pieces as well. So I had to learn how to manage my time effectively, and I wasn't very good at it at all. But there are 3 books for me that I highly recommend to everyone. And in fact, if I hadn't read these books and implemented some of these things now, I wouldn't be able to do the job that I'm currently doing now. I wouldn't have gotten to become associate director. I just wouldn't have the time. I wouldn't have the capacity to do the things that I need to do. So the first book is Getting Things Done by David Allen. So he talks very much about how you get everything out of your head. Your head's not for storage. Your head is for processing and analyzing and creative work. So figure out how to get stuff out of your head into a system. So you need a system, and he teaches you how to build the system. So he talks about task management, calendar management, email management, stuff like that. So that book I'd highly recommend. And then there's another book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, and he talks about how you prioritize stuff. The main gist of the book is, what's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, it makes everything easier or unnecessary. So it's like the Pareto principle, right? 80-20 rule. So what can you do that has the biggest impact? One thing can you do right now that has the biggest impact? So that's really useful. And the other one is Deep Work by Cal Newport. And he talks about how you can time block your time, use your time. It's basically energy management, right? Making sure you carve out time in your calendar, no distractions. You do it at the right time of the day that suits you. You get, say, for example, wake up 6 a.m. before you need to go to work, before the kids, well, I don't know how young your kids are, but maybe before your kids are awake, where you can get an hour and a half work done before, and the most important thing that you need to do in that day. So even if that's the only thing you do all day, you've had a productive day. There's another book, actually, a bonus book I'd recommend called Eat That Frog. So it talks about getting the hardest thing out of the way first thing in the day, so you can have a successful day. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sean. Yeah. I just take notes of all of them. So yeah, I will try to find it out on Amazon or something. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. They're all on Audible, so. And that's another trick. So I'd always listen to podcasts and car journeys, or or audiobooks in the shower, or whenever I went for a walk, I'd take my headphones and used. I mean, you don't want to overload yourself. I definitely have done that before. So you want to have some free time, enjoy nature without ingesting information. But I find those times during the day. It might be when you're doing the dishes or mowing the lawn, or whatever it is, doing some gardening. Try and multitask and have something in the background that you're learning, you're absorbing, you're immersing.
Any other questions? Questions going once, going twice? Well, thank you so much for your time today, Sean. I want to say I really appreciate the commentary on LinkedIn. It just makes my day.
Hopefully, won't be stopping anytime soon. So I'm glad you appreciate it.